What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Back Your Play. Rich Quinones here. As always, check us out on the YouTube channel at RichQNQ, hashtag BYP. We appreciate all the feedback, the subs, smashing the button, as we like to say, share, comment, and now we get to talk a little hoops with the holidays right around the season with our guy, Jonathan Marshall, our NBA insider, if you will, up there enjoying the nice warm weather in Boston, WMUR. What's going on, man? How are you?
It's freezing up here if you really wanted to know. It's cold. I think we're scheduled for another storm this weekend, so keep us in your thoughts and prayers this weekend.
What do you think? It's not going to hit Jersey. It's literally going to
just wait. Your turn's coming. Your turn's coming.
You don't have to tell me. It's funny you mentioned that because it always seems as though the snow just blows on one side.
Yep.
But listen, like I said, man, hopefully knock on wood, in the very near future, you'll see a nice little backdrop of the beach and the sun behind me. So that would be nice.
I want that for you, Q.
Hey, man, I appreciate that, brother. I appreciate that. All right, we got a lot of stuff to dive into. I think when we get to this time of year with Christmas, the holidays right around the corner, you're starting to kind of see separation. I think my point is, and we discussed this over the years, Jonathan, you start to kind of see what teams are really about a month or so in, but let's start with really a couple big things. Curry out now with the Warriors. That's a huge loss. They got waxed, by the way. I was very tempted to tweet at you during that game as my Knicks are just going on this great winning streak. But hey, how bad that loss right now, that's a tricky injury. The timetable might be a little iffy, but without him on the floor, you're missing about 30 something odd points, which means a lot of the bulk of the scoring has to go on the younger guys, the bench, and then of course, Klay Thompson. So how difficult is it going to be for the Warriors to kind of overcome that injury, I guess, in the short term?
It's going to be hard. I mean, you saw how it was last night, right? I mean, and this is the trouble when, they were banking on guys like Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Jordan Poole, James Wiseman to take that next step this year, because you look at Klay Thompson, he's not the same. And so thankfully, Steph Curry has somehow been able to maintain, and sometimes some may argue he's playing at the best he's ever played.
Yeah,
right?
Which is crazy.
But there's a drop off with Klay Thompson. And the fact that those younger guys haven't consistently been performing, the loss of Curry is even magnifying that even more, because this is their time to shine, right? You need a Moses Moody and Kuminga. You need Wiseman. You need these guys to start living up to their potential and what the expectations were. And so when those guys aren't living up to that, when Klay Thompson isn't the Klay Thompson that we've been used to seeing pre-injury, if there's no Steph Curry, then it's just more magnified now. Like who can you count on consistently to give you 20 and 30 a night? It's just not there.
Yeah, and that's the problem right now. They're currently the 11th seed. And you've got a lot of teams you need to kind of over jump. Now, there's a 4 to 5 game gap, if you will, from where there are to Denver. It's not as pronounced, like, say, in the Eastern Conference, where you have 3 teams that have won 20 plus games already in Milwaukee, Cleveland, and the Boston Celtics. But I still think it's a major loss. And then sticking in the Western Conference, we always talk about this. You mentioned the Lakers, you mentioned their 2 and Davis and James, and it's all about the availability and the health. And now the big man's going to be out for a month. His MVP odds, they were at plus 2,000 before the injury. And now all of a sudden they've dropped substantially to plus 1,000. And now you start to wonder going forward in his career, if this is going to be a lingering issue.
It's been an issue for some time, right? And I really didn't notice it until maybe when I was working in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, close to New Orleans. We covered the New Orleans teams. Yep. And I would notice AD would miss 4 or 5 games here and there, just little things, right? Nothing major, just he tweaked an ankle, just little things. Like, it's interesting. And then as he's progressed in his career, just be, just 10 games here, 10 games. There's always something every other week, it seemed like, with him. I'm like, at that point, I said, you know what? Down the line, when he's pushing 30, that's going to be a problem.
Well, because he's a big man, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, so it's a lot of weight. You're expected, in the way that he plays, he's expected to be a two-way player, right? He's expected to play defense and be a presence. You're asking a lot for somebody that size. You're asking a lot for him. For somebody that size to carry on that much responsibility offensively and defensively, that's a lot. And so I think going forward, AD, this is something that you have to just count on. Like, he's going to miss 20, 30 games. Like, that's just going to be a thing.
But again, it's different if we're talking about an elbow or a shoulder, right? We're talking about, your feet, your foot, right? And big guy. And you start to get into that Sam Bowie, Yao Ming, Jeff Rulin, the promising guys, right? I mean, well, yeah, we know he had a wonderful career, but my point is, those are dogging injuries, and it goes to the window again, kind of close. Like, how much load management maintenance now does LeBron have to carry on his shoulders?
Right. It's going to be a lot. And LeBron missed the game the other night against Phoenix.
Yes, he did.
When they got torched in Phoenix, right? And so we even seen LeBron having to sit out some games, the games that he would never sit out for an ankle, right? Like, these are games that he would always play. And so AD was supposed to be the guy who takes over that mantle. And there was a point a couple of weeks ago when he was really playing at a high level.
Yep.
But we all knew at a certain point that had a shelf life. It was going to end soon because physically AD just wouldn't be able to be there. And so I think the Lakers are in trouble. They're in even more dangerous situation than Golden State because there may be a point where AD may feel rushed to come back. Is he going to be even ready to come back at full strength? Will he be at full strength this season? Is he going to have to play through some pain? What does that do with him long term? There's just a lot of question marks when it comes to AD physically. And LeBron at this point, I don't think you can expect him to carry on that load every night. It's just can't happen.
No, I don't. Lakers on the road tonight against Sacramento. They're getting a 7.5. I mean, that Western Conference, when you really kind of break it down and you think about it, it's almost like going to be an NFL season, right? A war of attrition. Like, the healthy teams, I still think it's totally different. It's a 180 when you look in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I just pulled it up. Denver, Memphis, New Orleans, Phoenix, the Clippers starting to win a couple games here and there. I mean, if you think about it, Memphis has had the nice run over their last 10, even though they've dropped 2 straight, they're 7-3, but those are kind of your teams. Portland, since that great start, has really trailed off. Utah has trailed off. I do believe it's a different animal, though, in the Eastern Conference. When you look at Milwaukee, Boston, and Cleveland now all of a sudden, and it pains me to say this.
Yeah.
And you know where I'm going with this.
I know where this is going.
Like, all of a sudden, has the bulb gone off in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center? Like, what the hell's going on? I mean, they're engaged. Their defense is a lot better than we saw over last month. You got Kyrie playing, distributing, penetrating. You got Kevin Durant smiling, even though he's going back and forth with Thibodeau from the Giants on Twitter. But be that as it may, they're one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. They're 9-1 in their last 10. I mean, what do you attribute that Nets turnaround to?
I mean, they're talented. I mean, you got KD, you got Kyrie. Like, that's a talented duo. And whenever they're locked in, we all know. I mean, look, if you take out all the off-court distractions with Ben Simmons, with Kyrie, with KD as trade demands, most people would say the Nets should be the favorite in the Eastern Conference, right? Like, all things being equal, there's no issues outside of Milwaukee, Boston, Brooklyn. That would be the trio.
Yep.
Right. Like, I wouldn't call you crazy if you say the Nets are coming out the East. And so I think the real test for them, though, is can they handle the adversity? How are they going to handle it? Because it's going to come in an 82-game season. Like, everything is good now. Like, Kyrie is locked in, KD is locked in. Everything's good now. But let's get a string of, a couple bad losses. Like, how do you respond, right? Is KD is he gonna be frustrated? Is Kyrie gonna be locked in? Like, we all know at any given moment, this ship can sink, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the hesitation. Like, we're not questioning their talent, but how are they going to handle adversity in the long term, right? Like, how are they going to handle that? Because the team that I saw in the game in this first round against Boston last year when they got swept, that's the team that I'm scared. That just gives me hesitation. Like, are they going to be there fully mentally when it really matters, when the pressure's on? Are they going to break down mentally? And I don't know if I can trust this team just yet.
Kyrie, late addition to the injury report, right calf tightness. So again, you got to watch that. I mean, he's a guard. He's obviously bringing the ball up the floor. I mean, he's cutting all over the place. I mean, for any hoops player, that can be a nagging injury. But to your point, when you say, be engaged and overcome adversity, I look at this team and, as you mentioned, yes, they have all the talent and, Claxton's playing well. They got some depth, right? They have a good bench. They've tightened up the defense. Now, the perimeter defense was a major issue. I'm not asking Durant to be that rim protector, but you do have to some extent play both ends of the floor. Yes, we can agree to that.
Sure.
I just don't like them matching up against a Boston or Milwaukee because of Giannis and their depth, and they've got multiple shooters and perimeter shooters. And then you look at the guard play and you look at the tandem of Tatum and Brown and, well, really three, and Smart, who can give Durant fits, if you will. I'm not ready to sit there and say, okay, here we go. Put the Nets right up there. Record nice little run, but I think that's a terrible mismatch against any of those teams come playoff time.
And I think Cleveland offers a mismatch. I think Cleveland, their biggest advantage over most of these, I mean, you can line them up against any team, is that front court of Mobley and Jared Allen. Now, how many teams have two athletic 7-footers who can defend, who are present in the pick and roll? Like, that's tough to defend against, and you got to deal with that. And those guys can switch. They, like, it brings so much versatility to that defense. And the way Donovan Mitchell is playing, I think Cleveland is a notch over Brooklyn too. Brooklyn's playing well, but like you said, that top three, they offer so many mismatches to Brooklyn that I don't think they have the pieces to overcome that.
How about your guy the other night, Tobias, hitting a big three?
So, look, I'm torn, right? Because I've always been like, come on, I need more from Tobias, and he's doing it. Like, he's been making the shots. He's not over. It seems like he's just being a hooper. He's not over. I think my frustration with Tobias is that he seems like he's just thinking out there. You can see him thinking before he even makes any moves out there on the floor. Now he's just being a player. He's being proactive. He's not reacting. He's just playing, and we're seeing it. Did
you notice two things? They overcome Siakam last night, had 38-39. But did you? I watched the game. Once again, we know the NBA is all about runs, man. I mean, Toronto goes on a 19-1 run. I mean, you have to see, the problem with the Sixers is they don't know how to adapt and adjust when teams go on runs like that. They don't. They play panic ball because now all of a sudden they start to tighten up with possessions, or they want to force feed Embiid, right? Or they're not getting what they need. I mean, and I'm not talking about when you had, like, say, Maxey out there, or Tobias out there, or Harden out there healthy. Everyone on the floor is a different story. But still, man, it was an ugly win, but see, that's a good win for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah. I was scared watching that game. Like, here we go. Like, we've seen this before. Like, in Toronto's, I mean, their record, I feel like Toronto's roster is better than what they shouldn't be. Like, I don't get it. Like, that roster, that's a really good roster. Like, they have a lot of guys on that roster. And so when they make that comeback, in the past, we've seen Sixers teams just fall back and just give it away. Like, we've seen it in year on year and year out. And so that was a really good win. That was a really good win. But you're right. I mean, that's probably a product of coaching when it comes to that, though, right? Like, knowing how to handle those things. We've seen Doc Rivers in the past. I always go back to his Clippers stint and that team failing to live up to those expectations when things go awry. We've seen how they've reacted. And so I think when it comes to that, you got to look at the coaching, and is this team prepared? Are they prepared to handle these situations? Why are they, when things go left a little bit, when teams make these runs, why aren't they prepared? Why aren't they ready to take on this run, right? In a better way. And so it comes to preparation. That comes down to the coach. Yeah.
And even Brett Brown a couple of years ago, I mean, you got to learn to pivot. All right, let us wax poetic about the Knickerbockers right now. Listen, it's a great run. Randall all of a sudden is starting to play back into form, like that all-star level, averaging 22. Barrett's contributing, Quickly's contributing. For my money right now, I think the difference maker is Jalen Brunson.
I was going to say that when you finally have a point guard, right, who can sort of settle all these guys down, this is where you need to be. A guy that can make plays to where we're not. I think you guys were too reliant on Julius Randle of making plays, and that's just not.
But you can say that with a lot of teams, though. Sometimes when they have that one primary score. But yes, to your point, because I don't always need to see him back to the basket, and sometimes I don't even need to see him putting the ball on the floor. That's why you need a legitimate point guard that's going to distribute first, and then think about scoring second.
Right, and that's the thing. I think you get a guy in Brunson. So much the playmaking load is not on Julius, right? He doesn't feel like so much I have to make a play because there's nobody else out here. Now you have a guy in Jalen who can break down the defense, right? He makes the game so much easier for RJ Barrett and Quentin Grimes and Mitchell Robinson. Like, these guys benefit from having a point guard that can create for other people. And so I think Jalen Brunson, like, that's the biggest difference. Obviously, I mean, it's clear. Like, he's made such a huge, having a point guard like that makes things so much easier for everybody. It's just and it shows for the Knicks, like it does.
Yeah, and it opens up spacing on the floor. His last 4 or 5 games, I mean, 30-7, 22-6, 30-3, 21-5. I mean, it's what you want. Now, again, can you cut down the turnovers a little bit? I understand sometimes that just happens in the flow of a game. That's kind of always been their bugaboo over the last several years. But I can make a case for a lot of teams with that. Did you see they got their 2025 second round draft pick?
Really? Did they?
Forfeited?
I didn't see that. What happened?
Yeah, because apparently it was tampering with the contract that Brunson signed over the summer. And his father
Yeah.
is works with the Knicks now tight with Tibbs, but tampering in the NBA, I mean, that's ridiculous. Isn't it funny how when you go on social media, right, they would say don't look on social media or 12 o'clock midnight, but these deals were getting done
Yeah.
prior
I mean,
to.
LeBron tampers all the time.
Of course he does. It's a passive aggressive tamper. It's like oh, by the way, I don't think anyone's gonna find out. Yeah. So basically, NBA announced today they would lose their 2025 second round pick as a result of the investigation and the team's signing of guard Jalen Brunson.
I mean, tampering. Look, guys tamper all the time.
Yep.
It just happens at these all-star events. Like, come on, think like conversations are being had. These deals aren't just made up the day of free agency, right? Like, come on, there's negotiation process. There's a process leading up to these contracts. Like, it's ridiculous. But second round, you guys will be fine.
All right, let's go. I want to go over. So did you see the pardon me, the nominees for the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame?
I think it's in the read the list. I think I saw a couple names.
So you've got Paul Gasol, Dirk Nowitzki, Tony Parker, Pop, Dwayne Wade, and the 76 U.S. women's basketball team.
Wow. Kudos to Paul Gasol getting some love. Obviously he's not as compared to Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade, but he's a guy that I think a lot of people have forgotten about as far as how skilled he was as a big man. So that's honestly great for him to be mentioned with those other nominees for sure. Dirk Nowitzki's got to get in. Like Dwayne Wade has to get in. Popovich, we know what he's doing.
They're really kind of no brainers when you think about it. But I don't see any. Not to cut you off, NBA is a little different animal, man. It's not like the NFL. We're not looking at college or if you played in the USFL or the AFL or the World League back in the day, NFL, right?
Right.
We're taking. So I think for Paul Gasol, all those years that he played in Barcelona, that he played in Spain and whatnot. I mean, it's crazy. I'm looking at his career. It's just, and I forgot he was drafted by the Hawks.
Drafted by the Hawks, then traded to the Grizzlies, if I'm not mistaken. Correct.
And then the Lakers, and then the Bulls, two-time
with Kobe.
Champ. Yeah. Two-time NBA champ, 6-time All-Star. I don't know how much you put into that. Two-time All-NBA second team, 2-time All-NBA third team.
Yeah.
Rookie of the year. And then it goes EuroLeague, and that's where, you start to look at the influence, right? I mean, think about that. And I think it's like Tony Parker, right? You're looking at Tony Parker, and I thought, to me, Tony Parker's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, for sure. He definitely is. Now I'm happy for, obviously Dirk, Pop, D Wade, like those are no brainers, right? But to hear Paul Gasol, he's somebody that when you talk about some of the great, international players and even the great big men, the sort of 6'11" guys who are skilled, I think sometimes his name isn't mentioned enough, but he was like rookie Paul Gasol with the Grizzlies. And during that time, like he was a problem. And even, post Shaq Lakers era with Kobe and the Lakers, like Paul Gasol was a huge, huge role in those title runs, and so kudos to Paul Gasol for getting that recognition. Like he deserves it. He deserves it.
I think like to me, because, like I'm a historian of the league. And still, when I think of like big man, back to the basket, facing up, putting the ball on the floor, being the whole package, I still, for my money, overall, Larry Bird did things on a basketball court that few have ever done. And I really think people, maybe younger fans, just don't understand. I mean, when we say clutch,
Mhm.
Larry Bird was clutch.
Mhm.
When we say court vision,
Mhm.
basketball acumen, IQ, I mean, you watch some of those. It's just running the floor as a big man, rebounding, steals, getting down and dirty, the assist. It was almost like, 10 to 15 years after, or even 5 to 10, what we saw with Pistol Pete doing what he did with a basketball. And then you look at those teams and you look at how McHale was. And then as you kind of keep going, I'm trying to think of some of those, the era with some of those big mans, like Karl Malone to me was just a big dude who just played if we want to really say the power forward position, kind of a different way, right? Because he wasn't going to distribute the ball like a Bird or a McHale, right? But he was going to score. He was going to rebound, kind of like a Barkley, so to speak. And I guess my point to you is, when you look at today's game, it just seems as though it's predicated on guard play.
For sure.
And then everyone having the ball past the perimeter and almost like hero ball.
Yeah.
Let me try to create on my own. Like, I don't see that 84, 85 Celtics team, those early 80s 76ers teams, or that bad boy team that got everyone involved, or even late the 88, the run that the Lakers were making with Showtime, where they had wall-to-wall Hall of Famers. The game has changed differently. As a fan, as a hoops head that you are, do you like it more open, where it is, let me take these guys, draw them off the perimeter, see if I can blow by them? Or are you more inclined to yesteryear's NBA?
See, I'm torn, Q, because I appreciate, I appreciated, all the eras, like I came of age in the 90s, right? And so I guess I got the tail end of sort of that style of play. But then I still remember like the switch when things changed into that more one-on-one play. So I appreciate that too. So I'm really in the middle of it, because I can appreciate the 80s, like Bird and Magic. Like I love that era, right? I will say, I think when it comes to overall skill level, individual skills,
Yeah.
I think we're seeing things that I couldn't have imagined years ago. Like,
It's because, you know why? And I
Yeah.
know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
You're looking at guys like Luka.
right,
You're looking at Ja Morant.
right.
You're looking at Joker.
Yeah.
You're looking at what these guys are doing.
Individually, it's great to see, right? But as an overall team and just watching it as overall product, it's not the same, right? I think individually, these talents are mesmerizing, like what Steph Curry has done throughout his career, right? What we're seeing from Ja Morant, Luka, Giannis. I mean, these guys are ridiculous. Like, just, Giannis is literally the freak, right? Like, and we have another one coming up in Victor, over there in France. Like, it's ridiculous, the individual skills and talent level that we're seeing from these guys coming up. So I think that was the sacrifice, right? They sacrificed what we've seen from the 80s to now, these great don't get me wrong, great individual talents back then, right? But now it's in a different package. Like, these guys are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10".
No, listen, I get it, man. It's a different animal. I mean, it's highlight reels. I mean, and here's the other thing. A triple-double used to mean something.
Yeah.
Now these guys are doing it. I mean, what was the line? Was the Joker the other night 13, 13, 13?
Yeah.
Easy
triple-double, right?
It's like going to Wawa. It's natural to buy a cup of coffee. It happens every morning with what they're doing.
I'm glad you mentioned Bird, though.
Yeah.
This is me geeking out on hoops, but I had an awakening on Larry Bird years ago, Q. Because, as a kid, you catch the highlights of Magic and Bird and the Bad Boys Pistons. I never appreciated Bird as a kid, but I went back and watched some of his highlights. I said, this guy was ridiculous. He was a stone cold, like.
Watch Bird in 81 to 86.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you go back, and you might have it in front of you, you look at that 84, 85, 86 Boston team. they were just stacked. I think they lost 2 or 3 games at home. And they had, they also had an aging Bill Walton on the bench, but Ainge, Parrish, Dennis Johnson, McHale, Bird, they had depth. I mean, they ran roughshod. That's why they had all those battles with this, the Philadelphia 76ers. And when they would meet with the Lakers, it did turn into these mano-a-mano matchups, right? And the Lakers were a tough mismatch because Pat Riley, they wanted to go out and they wanted to run. The Boston Celtics, they wanted to kind of, strongly you squeeze you, slow it down a little bit. But the one thing that really separated them apart, and not a lot of people are talking about this, that was a team when they had an opportunity to get transitional buckets, they ran with the best of them. And Bird was chugging down the floor, man. And that's what makes it, these guys today, they don't want to play both ends of the floor.
Right.
There's a handful of guys in the NBA, we can agree that do that. But,
for sure. Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, when you were growing up, when you started the 90s, that's when it was, and the Knicks really started that. It was more, well, I would say Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit, yeah.
This is how we're going to beat you, right? We're going to physically, we're going to break your will. And everyone knows the story. Jordan wanted to, get stronger, the Jordan rules. And let me tell you why a lot of that's a fallacy. Because the Bulls in, I would say, 89, they were just as good as the Pistons. They lost in 6, I believe. And those games were somewhat close. And I think the last game was kind of a blowout. And we were still waiting for Pippen to kind of, quote, grow up, right? But they were right there. Right. And it just so happened that the Detroit Pistons had so many games in the playoffs, so many long seasons that everything caught up with them. So the Bulls got him in a right time for that dynasty, because if you go back a little longer, and my point is, if that was a younger Pistons team starting to ascend, the Bulls and them would have kept battling, man. And who's to say the Bulls might have not gotten the better of them is kind of my point.
That's true.
And it's just, that's why as a Knicks fan, I always knew they were never going to beat it didn't matter, man. It did not matter. It took Michael Jordan to step away, and they still took that series to 7 where Pippen was sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was a game where the Knicks were down 20. They came back. Pippen didn't want to come on the court. They drew up the play for Kukoc, right? Tony Kukoc, and he hits the 3. To me, that's when basketball was basketball, because you still had Indiana and all those teams, right?
Yeah.
You had Run DMC, right?
Yeah.
You had those guys, right? TMC, right? Chrissy Mullins and Richmond.
Yeah, Tim Hardaway.
Yeah. And then ultimately you also had the Miami Heat after that.
I love those Heat Knicks battles. That was really that's when I fell in love with basketball, Q. Like when I still remember Jeff Van Gundy holding on to his Alonzo Mourning.
I'll never forget. You might have been interning at the time, or it's after maybe you left 1290 The Ticket. I interviewed Mourning, and I was joking with him, and I said, it's the Hatfield and McCoys, and he's like, Rich, he's like, I hated those mother effers, and I just started laughing. I pulled it up real quick. The 1984-85 Boston Celtics. I still believe it's one of the all-time great teams. And it's crazy because they lost to the Lakers in 6. They were 63-19. Let me just give you some of these players. Bird, Danny Ainge, Dennis Johnson, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Cedric Maxwell, ML Carr, Rick Carlisle off the bench, Quinn Buckner. I mean, and then the 85-86 team was 67-15. And that was a team, if you might have to go back and watch the highlights. The Lakers were a banged up team in 86. And I don't know, you'll always see this one highlight of Ralph Sampson catching an inbound pass, awkward shot against the Lakers.
Against the Rockets.
The Rockets eliminate the Lakers.
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah.
Right. And that's when Elijah Wine was a very young player.
Yeah.
And it took him 7 years to get back to the NBA Finals. So the 80s, it was all the Celtics. and it was all the Lakers. And then obviously you can throw in the 76ers here and there. And
We got our one. We got our one.
So listen, the 76ers had an opportunity in 76. They were up 2-0 against Portland Trailblazers.
I do remember reading about that.
There was a player, I believe he might have been a 2 guard. I don't think it was a forward. I think it was a shooting guard, Bobby Gross, who just lit up the 76ers with Portland. And Walton was healthy that year.
That was
when
when
Dr.
Walton
J. Dr. J was also in his prime.
Was that the series, that famous Dr. J dunk over Walton?
Yeah, that was 70, Rip City, 76, 77. Yeah.
Billy Cunningham was on that? No, Doug Collins.
Dougie Collins, sure.
Yeah,
because it was right after the Olympic debacle. No, they had, I think Joe Bryant was on that team, Jelly Bean Bryant.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Who was, Dawkins was on that
Harold
team?
Dawkins. World Be Free. Was he on that team?
There you go. World Be Free.
There we go. See, I know my Sixers history.
Yeah.
I know a little bit.
That's why I think I love going back and watching because there were a lot of underrated teams. Like even in the 80s, people don't realize the Milwaukee Bucks in the early 80s, they were a good team. Sigma, Sidney Moncrief, they were a good team, man. All those years, Portland.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Portland had opportunity, and they just always ran in to the buzzsaw, whether it was Detroit, or whether it was the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, even I guess think about the championships that Shaq and Kobe got in the way of, right? Like Sacramento, Dallas. Dallas had Steve Nash, Michael Finley, and Dirk Nowitzki.
Well, Sacramento, I think it's funny, it's so funny you brought this up because we were talking about the officiating. In Sunday night's game in the Giants Washington game, which look, man, it was horrible, but what am I going to sit here and turn around and I've seen the Giants get screwed over the years, but
it is what it is.
My buddies were texting each other and my friend's like, yo, I'm telling you, the NFL is rigged. I said, it's not rigged. He said, no. I'm like, look, man, you can call holding. I said, you want to get in the rig? I said, let me see if I can get Donaghy on. I'm going to try to get him on because I had, and I had him on the Monday after he did the 60 minutes interview. I had him on for about 35 something odd minutes and I hammered. And then when, I was done dogging him and he was talking about everything, he said it's so easy in the NBA to fix games. Okay. Because and I'm glad you brought this up. It goes back to, I mentioned this the other night on the pod. It goes back to the makeup call, right? In the NBA, you're watching the game with your friends or your family or your dad, and you're sitting there and like, it's a friggin' makeup call.
Yeah.
Go back, 88, 89 finals, Detroit and the Lakers. Late in the game, game 7, Lambeer taps Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Come on. And the big man makes 2. And then, okay. I think it was the great Bob Ryan who said, hey, man, that call, wasn't a foul. We didn't call that because it was foul. You got called because of what you did 4 other times down the floor. So my point is with the NBA, and you mentioned Sacramento got screwed that series.
They definitely did.
That team was stacked. Now, I don't know if they would have won a legit series, but the free throw disparity, that's a major thing. And the ticky-tack. So I think it's a fascinating discussion when you think about it, because to me, I think you can get away with it a lot more in the NBA than you can in the NFL.
Yeah, and watching that, he has a documentary, I think, about that whole situation. And it opened my eyes up, and I look at the games differently now, like that call was kind of questionable. Like even with the star calls, right? That's a real thing. Certain guys get certain calls and vice versa, right? Like if you're not Luka Doncic, you're not getting these calls, right? Because you're Luka, because you're Steph, like LeBron, like there are certain calls that you're going to get, right? Whether it's right or wrong, you're getting these calls, right? And if it's a big game on national TV, we don't want Steph to foul out. We don't want LeBron to foul. Like there are certain things that are going to happen.
You don't. And you certainly don't want to have to deal with that in an NBA finals or a playoff series. See, that's the problem. I mean, look, and again, Knicks fan here, was Hubert Davis fouled? No. Hugh Holland, it was a horrible call, but I can't sit here because I've also watched the Knicks over the years get hosed with calls, but you can make the argument with so many teams. Now, you said there's a doc on that King series?
No, on just Donaghy in general. I believe Netflix has a series about different sports stories, and it's on Netflix.
And I haven't watched it yet. That might be
let me
homework assignment.
let me double check though. Tim Donaghy, Netflix. So Netflix has a series called Untold, and Donaghy's show is called Operation Flagrant Foul. It's really good.
What freaking unbelievable.
Like they get into like deep, like it gets deep. Like it's really, I would suggest you. It's on Netflix.
You're a college head too, man. You can even go back to the point shaving in the 80s.
Oh yeah. Like it's when like watching that documentary, it just made me realize how deep this thing goes. Like you get it, like Donaghy, I guess Donaghy got involved with the wrong group of guys. He got in he got in deep, and that's all it takes. Like, and there's a doc on there on this series. I think it was an Arizona State player back in the 90s who got caught up.
There was also point shaving in the late 80s, and then Boston College. You should look at this because you're up there now.
Yeah.
Ask, you go into the barbershop or you get your cut and you start talking hoops. Ask them about the Boston College.
Haven't heard that one.
Point shaving. Oh,
really?
Yeah.
See, the Arizona State one was very interesting because he's like, if the line is 4 points, right? I can miss, I can sort of manipulate, I'm gonna miss this foul shot, right? I'm gonna miss this layup, I'm gonna take this extra shot. Like there's certain things that on the surface, it doesn't look like anything, right? Like it's really crazy how you can manipulate a basketball game as a player or even as a ref. It's very interesting.
78-79, Boston College point shaving scandal.
Interesting. Huh.
So it was a scheme, and it was conceived by Rocco Perea and his brother, Anthony, in Pittsburgh during the summer of 78. They were small town gamblers. And I guess they started to recruit some of the players per se. And some of the players, I think HBO or ESPN maybe did something. They didn't want to roll over, but then you can, if you watch it, you can listen to some of these players and you totally know there was legit. So for instance, they played December 6, 1978. Boston College was favored to win by 6 to 7 points. And I guess they did a test run. And basically what they did is they established an early lead and then they won the game by 19. So what happened was the two brothers were pissed because they had all these losses. So they decided to recruit players now.
Wow.
And once you get the player in your back pocket, like the original Gambler movie with James Caan, you get the player in your pocket. That's pretty much all she wrote. So they did it against Harvard. They did it against UCLA. I think they did it against St. John's too. I'm not sure. And a game against Holy Cross, but
wow.
It's evident, man. I mean, when I went back and watched after I did that interview with Donaghy, I went back and I watched, I watched those games. Like, you go on YouTube, right? And and when you really watch them, you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And I think the person that spoke out the most, it wasn't Chris Webber. It was Doug Christie, I think.
Okay. I can't recall who, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Wasn't Doug Christie on those teams?
Christie was on that team for sure. And I think he was one of the more vocal guys on that team for sure.
It was always the free throw disparity.
Yeah. So watching as a kid, like I'm just thinking like, oh man, Shaq and Kobe are just whatever. But looking back at it now, like there are certain calls that's kind of questionable. Now you start looking at these games differently. That
team was stacked.
They were. Chris Webber, obviously, Vlade Divac,
Lottie Dottie, Pager, right?
Peja Stojakovic.
Yep.
I mean, he was a sniper.
Yep.
I look at the Portland teams with Rasheed Wallace and those guys. Like, there were some good teams in that Western Conference. Like, very good teams. Like, full like depth. Like, they can go 8-9 deep.
It was 2004, 2005. Or 2000. What year was that?
Might have been. Was it 03? No, maybe not. 02.
Hold on. You might be right. They lost to the Timberwolves in 2003, 2004.
Okay.
They lost in the first round, and maybe it was 2002.
Might have been 02.
All right, 2002. They lost to the Mavericks. Jesus, man, they had some 61-21 in 2001. Was that the year?
That might have been.
They lost to the Lakers in 7 games.
Yeah.
They were 61-21. Here you go. Bibby.
Yeah.
Chucky Brown, Doug Christie, Mateen Cleaves, Lottie Diva. Oh, they had Funderburk on that squad. Bobby Jackson. Right.
Bobby Jackson, nice bench player for them.
Pollard.
Scott Pollard,
Turkoglu.
Hedo Turkoglu, yes. That's a complete team. That's they had the point guard, they had the shooting, they had some skilled big guys between Weber, Divac, Turkoglu. So that was a
young squad too, man. They only had 2 players that were really kind of Divac and Chucky Brown were already in their 12th years. The rest of them were like 3rd, 4th, 5th, obviously, except for a guy like Weber and Doug Christie. But now I'm excited. Now I'm gonna have to watch that tonight.
Yeah, you gotta watch it, Q. You gotta.
I definitely am. All right, all right. Before I let you get out of here, real quick, we're about almost 2 months in, early NBA MVP right now.
Wow. You would ask me now when the guy in Denver's going crazy right now.
I have to, because I make a note of it. You know me. I put a note 12/21. And when we kind of revisit this conversation in 2 months, see how it changes odds wise.
Man, the way Jokic is playing. Up until this point, I've been Jason Tatum, right? Boston, top team in the East. They've sort of, tailed off right now.
Agree.
A 3-time MVP back-to-back. I'm kind of questionable if voters would, make that happen. But at this point, what Denver's doing, top seed in the West, I would say the Joker right now. Everything revolves around him. It does.
But you mentioned, all right, back to back to back. Do you think there's going to be a bias when it comes to the voting?
Oh, there definitely will be.
So
there definitely will be. If Boston finishes with the best record in the Eastern Conference, let's get Tatum in there. He's a rising star, right? So yeah.
So it leads me to this, and then I'll let you get out of here. And I appreciate the extended segment. Great stuff as always. NFL, right? Your Eagles, Jalen Hurts might be out on Saturday, but that's not a big deal. I have no problem. I've gone on record saying I think the kid's the MVP. People have gone back and forth with me, and I'm like, listen, it's not his fault. He's got playmakers. I mean, that's a good thing. I don't tell me Patrick Mahomes doesn't have playmakers, because to some extent Patrick Mahomes has playmakers. Don't tell me Josh Allen doesn't have playmakers. Don't tell me, Joe Burrow doesn't have playmakers.
Mar Chase is the best wideout outside of Justin Jefferson.
What do we do? So let's just say Jalen Hurts misses a game or 2. Okay, fine. Should he really be punished? The conversation we had the other night with Lloyd Vance was that there's going to be this bias anyway towards Patrick Mahomes. And he's put up monster numbers, don't get me wrong. But I think for a young quarterback, second full year to make that transition, finally get some weapons and flourish like this. And we're not even talking about the Eagles as a whole with their record. And we're not even talking about the rushing yards he adds, the extra element. Do you think if he misses a game or 2, that will hurt him in the MVP voting?
I think naturally it will, right? Especially if the Eagles continue to win, if Gardner Minshew just lights it up these next couple games, I think that will hurt him, right? It's it's not just Jalen Hurts.
Well, what if he doesn't? That helps his cause.
But if he doesn't, it does help his cause. But my thing is, Q, in any other year, the quarterback of the best team in the league, when is he not winning MVP? Has that ever happened? Can we think, I'm trying to think when that hasn't happened.
I'm sure there's an argument you can make and say quarterback A was much better, but it's almost like every year in the NBA back in the day, we're giving it to Michael Jordan. I mean, even the years that Karl Malone won it, they just, or when LeBron in his prime or Kobe or Shaq. But yeah, to your point, I see what you're saying, but I, again, can argue that he's playing the best football at the quarterback, in the quarterback position right now.
He is. I mean, just what he does for the offense with his arm, with his legs, like he's making some amazing throws.
Yeah.
Like this team is a machine offensively in large part because of what he's able to do and the threat that he has with his arm and his legs. And so I think with Jalen Hurts, it's just hard to wrap your mind around it, right? Jalen Hurts, the guy who got benched because, in college, he shouldn't be doing this. Like where he started at and to where he's at now, people are still figuring out, like, is this real? People are waiting for the fall off. And I think until people really believe in Jalen Hurts, that's why there's going to be this doubt. But it's just, we can't picture him being in the same sentence as Josh Allen and Burrow and Mahomes. People still can't believe it. But
I think I think a lot of it is bias. I think
it is.
Some of it's recency bias.
And, it is.
It
definitely is.
I mean, it just
look, what he's doing is it's legit. Like they have one loss. He's a legit quarterback.
And how about this for kind of the irony, right? Carson Wentz was having an MVP like year, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if the mustache is going to come in like sexy Jesus and take them, deep into the playoffs.
I will say I'm confident that we can get a win on Saturday with Gardner Minshew. Yeah. The way that Dak Prescott is throwing that ball around, anybody can take it away. You could probably get a pick off Dak right now if you suited up right now, So
I don't think the Giants defense can.
I'm confident that we can get a win Saturday. I'm confident.
No, I can see the Eagles winning that one. Of course, he is Jonathan Marshall at John_Marshall3, sports reporter anchor at WMUR. Fantastic stuff, brother. I appreciate it greatly, man. We're going to do it every week, talking some hoops. Have a good holiday. Hopefully Delaware's not as cold as Boston when you get home.
It's going to be cold still. I'm not going to Florida anytime soon. I don't think so. We'll see.
All right, brother. I always appreciate a couple moments, pal.
All right, you take it easy.
All right, there you have it. All right, my guy, Jonathan Marshall, good stuff. Talking a lot of NBA with him. Appreciate him greatly. And it's a really fascinating dynamic when you start to get into, the fixed games and whatnot. So we're definitely going to have to check that out. We'll give you some plays later on the week. Got some good guests coming up. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button, like, share, comment. Good stuff from Jonathan Marshall. Follow him again on Twitter at John_Marshall3, as myself at Rich Q. Appreciate everyone keeping us locked into a Wednesday edition of BYP. Later on in the week, we're going to try to get Lake Lewis on. Working on Nelson Figueroa, talk a little hot stove baseball with him. His Mets spending a lot of money. Also, Nick Costco, a little college feel with him. And hopefully we'll catch up with the big man, Brandon Jacobs, as well. Have a good Sports Wednesday. We will talk to everyone Thursday.